I mentioned in my doing the things that I did a little something for May the 4th. And honestly, on May the 4th, it crossed my mind. Now, I understand. This is kind of getting in the news. We're going back to Solo. But I know Solo comes out the 25th of this month. I could not for the life of me think of why they wouldn't release Solo on the May the 4th. And I understand Solo's line is hokey religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side, kid. So he's not exactly the one who would say, May the 4th be with you. But it's still a Star Wars Day, and that seemed like the perfect opportunity to release Solo. If you're going to release it a few weeks later, why not release it on May the 4th and take advantage of the newly created holiday that all the fans have made?
Well, I can see your argument there, but I can tell you exactly why they didn't do that.
Get some space between Infinity War and Solo?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they're going to need it, too, because, I mean, right now, Infinity War is dominating.
Infinity War, again, just crushing it this weekend. And you can talk a little bit about the total so far, and maybe we can speculate on just how much money this thing is going to make by the time it's all over.
Okay, well, over at superherohype.com, it shows that, and this was posted today, it shows that it's got a global total of $1.164 billion in just 11 days. This is the fastest ever to cross $1 billion globally. And to kind of put that into context, I'm looking over at a website called Mental Floss, and it's got the 20 highest grossing films of all time. And they've got this list here, and it's adjusted for inflation. So, and this is the highest grossing. This is not the net monies, but it's the highest grossing of all time. And the highest grossing adjusted for inflation is 1939's Gone with the Wind. And it's got it at $1.854 billion. 1.8. Well, we'll go ahead and call it $1.9 billion. Star Wars number 2 at 1.6.
So by the time Solo comes out on May 25th, Infinity War will be the new highest grossing film.
I certainly believe so. This list over at that website, mentalfloss.com, this was posted on May the 3rd. And looking at it here, this had to have been done. I guess at May the 3rd it hadn't yet hit $1 billion. But I'm sitting here looking at this list. It's got Jurassic Park. It's got Star Wars Episode 1. It's got The Return of the Jedi, Ben-Hur. It's got Avatar. And this movie has crushed a lot of these films in just 11 days. And as a matter of fact, it's got, what did we say it was, 1.64 billion? 1.164.
164, yeah.
1.164. So that's got it, in looking at these things adjusted for inflation, Jaws is at 1.175. So you're looking at, that's got 1.8. There's a good chance by the end of Sunday, we're recording on Sunday, by the end of today, this movie could be the 6th highest grossing movie of all time in 12 days.
That seems impossible, but at the same time, it kind of makes sense with all that has gone into this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, they've already been talking about the fact that this has never been done before. Nothing even close to this has been either attempted or accomplished in film. And the thing about the Marvel Cinematic Universe is that you have all of these sequels, none of which suffer from sequelitis. I mean, if you want to go like Thor the Dark World, something like that, you might say, oh, that wasn't quite as good as the first one. Definitely not as good as Thor Ragnarok. But none of these movies are continuing the one single storyline. It's not like this is Avengers 7, right? Just the Avengers It was the amalgamation of all of the characters in that first phase. But every movie is completely different, and then they just join up in the big crossover movies. So you're not looking at a series like Friday the 13th, where it's got basically 10 films and then a remake, and then
the thing is that your Friday the 13th films, those are almost cut and paste.
Yeah, and they're the same. They're all the same character. I mean, you have different people for Jason to kill, but it's the same storyline. What you have with Infinity War, like, yes, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is all one storyline, but you don't have 18 Iron Man films. You have 18 films of all these various characters that meet up every now and then.
Right. And, kind of the thing that jumps out in my mind about it kind of goes along with what you're saying is when you consider, like, the Captain America movies, the first Captain America Avenger, the first Avenger film, it was pretty much just a war film.
Right.
It was a war film. And then you go into The Winter Soldier, and The Winter Soldier was more espionage.
Yeah.
And then you go into Civil War, and it's its own thing as well. So they're sequels. It's a continuation of a story, but it's not.
Well, and that's another thing is so much has gone on between the Winter Soldier and Civil War in the universe that it's not even those two. Yeah, it's Captain America 3 technically, but it's not just a Captain America movie. Even Thor Ragnarok, okay, it's a Thor movie, but it's the setup to Avengers Infinity War, basically. And
it is.
It's a completely different style than the other two Thor movies.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about sequels, I remember Short Circuit.
Yeah.
Back from the 80s. And then that was a pretty fun movie, and then you had Short Circuit 2. And Short Circuit 2 was just a straight up sequel. And that's the beauty of these universes is the fact that while they are sequels, it's almost like I don't know how to best put it because it's not like comic books. It's because in comic books, when you have Action Comics, you have Superman fighting Doomsday in one, and then you realize in the next issue, you realize, okay, well, Lex Luthor sent Doomsday, and then you realize that Brainiac sent Lex Luthor, and you realize that all these things are connected, but it's a straight continuation. Here with the Captain America films, it's a continuation of everything that's going on from the first Iron Man film, and each of these movies, while the Captain America films are focused mainly on Captain America, they also incorporate the things that have happened to Captain America and some of his buddies along the way.
Well, and this, I mean, we could spend 2 or 3 hours just talking about how this is working and why it's working. But it's a testament to what they've figured out, how to release these movies in such a way that they never feel old, even within these quote comic book movies. Some of them are different genres entirely.
Right.
We just talked about the differences in the Captain America and the Thor movies, but then you have something like Black Panther. It's its own thing. Ant-Man is completely different feel watching that movie, but then you get them on the screen together and they work. They're completely different characters and living different lives, but when they're in a team-up movie, whether it's Civil War or all the way to Infinity War, it works because of the way it's been set up, the way it's been planned. So they're knocking it out of the park, and I don't see any end in sight with that.
No, not at all. And I'm sitting here looking at this list here, and there's only, and I say only, there's about $40 million difference in the fifth and sixth films on here. I mean, it could be the case that where this movie's sitting at right now, it could be fifth. really easily, depending on how much money it does today, which is incredible to me.
I'm just ready to see it at number one. So,
well, okay. So if we want to get into, this predicting mode, how much do you think that this movie will end up with in the box office?
Well, you got 1.164 billion in 11 days. We're talking about you're going to have a lot of people that are going to go back and see it again. Mm-hmm. I do feel like it's not going to do that every week. I mean, it can't. Now, I say that no film ever has. That doesn't mean it won't. It's just, it seems like there's no possible way it can keep that up for the whole run in theaters. But we were talking about, I don't see any reason why 2 billion, 2.5, worldwide couldn't be attainable.
No, I think 2 is pretty easy. I'm sitting here looking at a list of upcoming films. And I just don't see anything in the next Deadpool 2's in a couple weeks. I just don't see anything that's going to jump out.
And that's what usually happens to a blockbuster movie, is that it crushes it for a couple of weeks and then the next big thing comes out. But even the next big things that are coming out still pale in comparison to what this movie is. Yeah. So, yeah, Deadpool 2, I'm looking forward to seeing that. But if I were given free tickets and they said, look, you choose between Deadpool 2 or seeing Infinity War again, I'd probably go see Infinity War again.
I agree. And then to see a week... See, that's one thing I don't understand, though, is that... And I guess it's mostly because it's still a Fox film. Because a week after Deadpool, you have Solo.
Yeah. Yeah, so Disney's not spacing them out yet.
No, I feel like they should have done a better job with that. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that jumps out that's coming out in the next month. Other than those 2 films, I just don't see anything. And there's a good chance that this movie could beat Deadpool.
Yeah, even on Deadpool's opening weekend.
Maybe. I really think that might be a stretch. Because we're talking that's 2 weeks away.
There are a lot of fans waiting on Deadpool 2, and it looks like it's going to be better than the first one. And maybe for a week you can get another number one besides Infinity War. But even then, I can see the possibility of Infinity War jumping right back to number one after Deadpool's opening weekend.
I could too. I could see it jumping right back up.
Well, we have...
yes, we say that, but then once again, Solo's coming out the following week.
Yeah, everybody's boycotting Solo. So,
I'm going to see it.
I'm going to go see it. I'm excited for it.
We've talked a little bit about Disney. They're creating their own... I don't know if it's actually officially named this or not, but we're calling it Disflix. And it's Disney's own online streaming service. Well, it looks like Warner Brothers and DC is actually starting to follow suit with that. And they're creating their own DC online streaming service, and they're calling it DC Universe, which is not confusing at all because everything else is called the DC Universe. But what it looks like is that, and this is, I'm looking at digitalspy.com right now, and there's a pretty good article. And it looks like they're going to bring a few shows over. The primary being what was supposed to go to TNT, the cable network TNT. It looks like Titans is going to end up landing on that.
Yeah, I was going to say when you first added this to the show notes, and I saw the headline. DC Universe doing their own streaming service. My first reaction was, how are you going to compete with Disney and Marvel and Star Wars and all that? But honestly, looking at what's going to be available here, and that's a lot of times some people might forget. Yeah, okay, the DC EU is struggling a bit when it comes to being compared to the Marvel Universe. What other series of films isn't struggling compared to the Marvel Universe right now? But when you take into account all of the DC properties, shows, animated, live action, TV, films, you take all of it and throw it in together, it's actually a pretty decent service.
Yeah, this is what I was thinking. You can ask the question of whether or not they even have to compete. I really don't look at it as that they have to compete. Really, the only people that need to be concerned might be Netflix.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't very long ago that Warner Brothers and Netflix agreed to a multi-year deal where just as soon as the seasons were over with of Arrow and Flash and Legends of Tomorrow, just as soon as those went off in May, within 2 weeks they're supposed to be on Netflix, so people can stream those and be ready for the next season when it comes out.
Yeah. And honestly, that's where I don't watch any of the shows when they air. I watch them when they come to Netflix.
Because there's too many of them. It's hard. It's really hard to keep up.
Yeah.
And the summer is really the only kind of time that I have to catch up on them. But it looks like they're creating looks to be a live action Swamp Thing series, which could be good. I think they tried that several years ago. Back in the early 90s, it had Heather Locklear in it, and she was the best part, and the only reason she was any good is because she was pretty.
Well, and it's gonna reach the point with Netflix anyway. Now Hulu is a little different story because they have contracts with a lot of the networks, so that usually like the day after the show aired, you can see it on Hulu. And even soap operas you can watch on Hulu for those who keep up with their stories, But Netflix, you take Disney out. Well, there's all your Star Wars movies, all your Marvel, all of the Disney movies that are on Netflix now. Those are going to be gone. And Warner Brothers and DC, if they do the same thing with all of their properties, TVs, movies, everything, Netflix isn't left with much other than whatever movies they can scrape together the rights to and their original content, which they do have a few good original series, but it's not going to be enough, I don't think so, to warrant a Netflix subscription if they lose their contracts with all the different film companies.
Right. Well, the only thing I can think of is that perhaps, and this looks like it's mostly going to be a DC exclusive kind of thing, so it may not be all of Warner Brothers, but, if you're considering all of the shows that they've got, you're talking 23 hours of television times 4 television series, and that's not taking into account. I didn't even think about Black Lightning. So that could be problematic for Netflix, but it's also going to planned currently, and this is something that a lot of people may be looking forward to. Is a continuation of the Young Justice series. Yeah, that was a pretty good cartoon series. It showed up on Cartoon Network, and it was on there for a couple of seasons, and then it went away. But it was actually a really good show. It was pretty true to some of the origins that we would see in the comic books. Maybe with the exception of Miss Marsh, and even that they got a lot of that correct. And we were kind of looking forward to it. It alluded to a continuation of some of those storylines there, and then it stopped. And it's been 5 years since that. But it's supposed to show, as far as I know, it's supposed to kind of pick up maybe where it left off, or at some time. They're also bringing in a Harley Quinn animated series that's supposed to be exclusive to the streaming service. And I feel like that should do pretty well, especially, when we were at the TupuloCon, how many of the Margot Robbie Harley Quinns did we see?
Well,
there were several.
And we even saw an original Harley Quinn that mentioned that. And like, well, all these other girls are the Margot Robbie Harley Quinn. They're the Suicide Squad Harley Quinn. I'm the real one, you know?
Well, maybe. I don't remember seeing. See, the original Harley was the one that was kind of dressed up like a court jester.
Yeah.
And I didn't see that one. I saw another one that was more like from the Injustice line.
Right.
And I thought she did. I mean, they all look pretty good. They all did a good job with the character, but
well,
anyway,
and
that's another point.
You're not going to see many dress up like the court jester Harley Quinn.
Well, this is true.
But this Warner Brothers service, I'm just looking down through here, even some of the old shows, I'd be interested in going back and watching through those. But honestly, with all of the streaming services, I don't have time to watch everything I want to watch. There's so many shows I would love to watch, but I would have no time for anything else but watching TV.
I know. Wouldn't that be awesome if we got paid to watch television? That'd be great. But, consider some of the other things that might show up on here. They're talking about a Metropolis television show, which is supposed to be like the origin of Lois Lane, which is kind of silly, but
she was born.
She was born, so it's not going to be that original. But it's supposed to have her as a younger reporter, and she's actually good friends with Lex Luthor. So it's kind of taking a little different approach to Smallville, I guess. Which, in its inception, Smallville was supposed to be Metropolis, which was, before that, it was supposed to be Gotham. So you never know what you're going to end up with. But some of the old shows that the website speculates that we may actually see is the Lois and Clark New Adventures of Superman back with Dean Cain. Yeah,
that was a good one. That was back when Dean Cain was fit.
Yeah.
Looked like Superman.
Yeah, this is true. Looked like Superman. The funny thing about that statement is if you go back and you watch one of the first couple episodes, they did like a police sketch of what Superman looked like, and it looked like the comic book version of Superman as opposed to what Dean Cain actually looks like. So I thought that was kind of funny. They're speculating the John Wesley Shipp version of the Flash. Smallville would be in there. Batman the animated series. I would love to see Super Friends on there. Just because I think it shows up on Boomerang, but I may be mistaken on that because I don't have Boomerang. I would go back and I'd show that to Chloe in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But there's still the only other thing that you might have to consider is how much would you pay for that service.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like right now,
speculation.
Right now is Netflix is what, I guess $10 a month.
Yeah, give or take.
The thing is, right now, that's well worth it because of all of the film companies that are signed on there. But if these film studios start jumping ship from Netflix and just creating their own service, and everybody has their own version, I don't know how much money you're going to have to spend to be able to watch everything.
Well, that's kind of what Marvel did with their film studios. Sony blew their chance at buying the rights for all these characters.
And that is one of the big things about, I guess, these different deals that the studios have done over the years. At the time, it wasn't worth it to Sony to purchase all the characters.
Right.
And we talked when we were talking about Marvel and DC a few weeks ago, we were talking about the fact that Marvel created the cinematic universe with the characters they had not signed away. And now they're slowly, bringing them back into the fold. But that's funny now to look back and Sony say, "No, we don't want it all." That could have been. But in a way, I'm glad it has happened the way it has because I feel like Sony might have messed it up. They would have never been able to pull this off like the Marvel Studios proper has.
Right, and I think that a lot of that has to do with the examples that we have are those Fantastic Four movies,
right?
And we've got how many times there's in recent memory, there's been 3 Spider-Mans. So
yeah, and they reset it because all they have to do to keep the rights is keep making movies. So instead of making a
Right.
sequel, they just reboot it. 5 years down the line.
That's the whole reason that they actually made that last Fantastic Four film.
Right.
With the Naked Thing.
Yeah, it was just to keep from losing the rights.
Exactly. And they threw together the worst possible movie, and I feel terrible for those actors because it was it's by all accounts it was really bad. I never sat down and watched it because I had heard so many bad things about it.
It's interesting when you look at where we are now. We didn't have anything like a cinematic universe. We were just excited to get a comic book movie, and we didn't care about how they all lined up, or did they all fit together, or did they make any sense. We didn't care about that. It was just neat to see these characters in live action.
Right. Yep, I agree.
And one of the things we're going to do pretty soon, probably right after we finish the comic book series, history of comic book movie series, is get into a discussion of reboots.
A couple weeks ago, we had a Friday the 13th. It was a couple weeks ago, yeah, about 3 weeks ago now. We had a Friday the 13th episode, and we talked a little bit about one of my favorite films growing up, was Critters. And apparently, over at bestofcomicbooks.com, they're reporting that the 80s cult horror classic Critters is getting a remake in the form of a television show.
Nice.
And I'm okay with this. As far as I can tell, there's not. Let's see here. I don't see anything as far as the actors go. If you go over there, you can kind of see what those little dudes look like. They're little fuzzy demon balls.
Yeah.
With red eyes and teeth. That's about the only. They look like dirt covered with hair and teeth. But let's see here. What does it say? It says it's a live action series called Critters: A New Binge, and I don't know if they plan on having it as it says a remake, but I would be kind of okay if they just did it as kind of a sequel to the 1980s films.
Yeah.
Especially if they brought the folks in with the black leather weird outfits and everything, I'd be perfectly fine with that. And I don't see where it says where this is going to end up landing. See, here it says if the 80s, 90s horror comedy talk is making you nostalgic. Okay, it talks about VHS. So that just shows you how old this stuff really is.
Maybe that'll release on VHS.
Then nobody would be able to watch it.
I can watch
Nobody.
it. I can watch it. I've got a working VCR hooked up.
I've got one. I've got one as well, but that's because we're.
Well, that'll be the perfect place to re-release a remake of an 80s show. Just make it exclusive to VHS owners. Don't worry about streaming.
That's some exclusivity right there, buddy.
I know that's right.
Mm-hmm.
It would make me feel special.
Yeah, because we need help feeling special. Because we're old guys.